And we want to bring in CBS News Miami's Jim DeFede. Jim, what is your take on this? We are in uncharted territory. This has never happened before, and the sentencing for Donald Trump has been set for 4 days before the Republican National Convention.
So there's a couple of thoughts that I have. One is just, this is really a sad day for the country. I mean, it is. A former president of the United States has been convicted, including of a felony conviction in the state of New York. And I think it's equally sad when you hear comments like what Governor DeSantis just put out and others, which are intended to weaken the rule of law, which is intended to undermine the jury system. Governor Ron DeSantis wasn't in that courtroom. Governor Ron DeSantis wasn't inside the jury room. He doesn't know how the men and women in that jury handled their responsibilities, and to assume that they did something improper or illegal or let their own biases come through just weakens us as a country, because if we are not a country of laws in which the jury system prevails, then we are lost as a country. And so I think you're going to hear a lot of that. I don't think Governor DeSantis is alone. I think that you're going to hear that sentiment from Republicans up and down the aisle. And I understand it, but it doesn't help us move forward as a country.
Understandably, people are going to have a lot of questions about what comes next. We're talking about the sentencing. People, of course, wondering, so can he still run for president? The answer to that is yes. But you brought up an interesting point about whether he can vote for president as a resident of Florida.
Right now, it's a little hazy, but it does appear that he will be able to vote, because there's an issue that of the sentence. You have to actually. Florida sort of concedes to New York state law, and New York state law allows felons to vote during that initial process. So there's a stage here where it's unclear. We've got calls out to both the supervisor elections in Palm Beach and even some supervisor elections across the state to try to get some clarity on this. But certainly it's not an ideal situation when you look at it from that perspective. So yes, the whole issue.
You have to admit, it is ironic in Florida, which for so many years made it so difficult for convicted felons to vote, even after they served their term. And even after we passed the constitutional amendment giving them that right, there was still difficulty for convicted felons to cast the ballot. And now Donald Trump finds himself in this predicament.
Well, this goes, and this is one of the things that Donald Trump has done very effectively in terms of trying to liken himself and say how this enamors him, or he benefits in the black community because of this sort of case like this. You know, Donald Trump is a person of extreme privilege and wealth. Anytime he compares himself to the plight of African Americans who have been wronged by the judicial system, I always get a little concerned by that analogy. Look, I think that the question everyone wants to have at this point is, do these charges, does this conviction make a difference in the presidential race? Right. And I think that it could on the margins in certain states. I think that is certainly a possibility, but I think a lot of this is just baked in. I think the undermining that has been taking place of our institutions, whether it's the media or Congress or anything else, has been very successful. I'm not suggesting Donald Trump started it, but he has exploited it to an extent that goes far beyond anyone else. And I think that this gets baked in. I think Democrats always believed that he was guilty and will view it that way, and Republicans will see this just as Governor DeSantis and others have told them to see it, which is that this is a sham trial by a crooked judge and a crooked process. And I think for those people who are in the middle, I think it's difficult. Now, when you talk about states like the swing states like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, that are won by a handful of votes,
could make a difference.
Could make a difference for independents. But what we've seen with Donald Trump is so many things that you would think would kill any other politician politically does not.
And of course, the appeal process looming as well. Jim DeFede, thank you so much for your insight. As always, I'm sure we'll have more questions for you throughout the evening and the rest of the week.
And we have live pictures of the motorcade.
Yes, these are live pictures right now at former President Trump's motorcade as he leaves the courthouse in New York City.